Hello, everyone, or maybe just Barry at this point. I am going to walk you through my paper and hopefully only take about 5 minutes. So let's just get started. So when Joseph Heath was here, he kind of walked us through the logic of where the socialists have gone. And it's pretty funny because he basically just says that they became Rawlsians. And he reemphasizes the fact that this isn't really contentious. It's just what happened descriptively. And I talked to him a little bit about this paper, because it's t trying to frame the socialist calculation debate in a way that is allowing the socialists to have some kind of minimal response. And it's been largely given that the socialists basically lost the debate, even though a lot of points by Oscar Lang kind of survive in some modern form. It's widely accepted that the socialists lost and that the capitalists won this debate, right? So that's my thesis, that the China model is a way to respond for the socialists in a very minimal way while not actually changing much of the debate. And the socialists are worried about kind of exploitation within the firm now rather than exploitation within the price system, which they were historically concerned about, but now they've mostly given up that ghost. So just to kind of contextualize the paper a little bit, so what China's doing now is basically increasing political control from a decentralized angle. So we have the pre and post Deng reforms that uh, they opened up a lot of property rights for individuals and companies, but they also have kind of constrained the firms in more ways by having decentralized control structures. And they do so by having party officials actually on firm boards so they can make votes and they can stop or initiate firm decision making. Super, and those people are also, those firm agents are also controlled by the party back in Beijing. So there's a lot more decentralized control, a lot less control overall, but a lot more control actually in the firm. And Alex Schaefer has a paper on this, and he kind of distinguishes between within firm control and above firm control, with within firm control being not so destructive of the price system or market order, and above firm control being distortive of market order. So Schaefer interprets, Hayek as a kind of spontaneous order theorist. He's looking at markets as a way and not explaining them um, in terms of very like obvious ways, but they're more spontaneous and you can't predict so much what their outcomes are going to be. So things that preserve spontaneity are going to be things that are conducive to market order, and things that don't are going to not be. And he thinks this maps onto the within firm and above firm distinction pretty nicely. Because when you think about it, central planning is destructive in his view because it doesn't allow the firms to respond to spontaneously. And I think there's something here to this distinction, but I think it's not that it's not allowing the firms to respond. They're obviously responding in central planning when, a nail factory is told to make nails. They're responding to the government's demands rather than consumer demands. So I think there's something to be said about what to who the factories or the um, producers are responding to, because they're obviously responding as efficiently as they can in both scenarios. It's just that above firm commands for instance, the Soviet Union style commands are not allowing for any kind of response to consumer demands. They're just responding to the government incentives, and those are not producing efficient outcomes. So I want to kind of use this to help explain why the socialists have some kind of response to give. And it's basically by observing just the exact kind of details I just observed that within firm commands, in the way in which China has been doing decentralized control, allows for both political and economic goals to be pursued. It does distort, market outcomes and in a way that is not as conducive to market order as capitalism, but it seems to be working efficiently enough for now in China. But this also allows for the other critique within the socialist calculation debate that Hayek raised, which was decentralized planning is you need decentralized planning because centralized planning is always going to fail to have local knowledge required for market order. So both of these, I argue, are, perhaps enough to have a surviving price system in China. So I think this kind of has a nice dichotomy where we can kind of conceptually explain why in the top right, the Soviet Union has, high centralization and high property rights or high constraint of property and is just economically infeasible. And when we move over to low centralization, but still high constraints via the decentralized decision makers in the firm, we get something that is a lot more compatible with market order, namely the China model. And then when we move over to low centralization and low property constraints, a la the US, we get something that's very conducive to market order. So this might leave us in a very kind of unsavory conclusion where we're accepting, these two kinds of like theories of spontaneous market order being compatible with the kind of authoritarianism that we don't really so much want to say that is doing well. And I think this is potentially not great because we might want to have a bit more space between these kind of liberal society, open society views and more authoritarian regimes on this note of compatibility with market order. And obviously there's some, but if there's not a sharp enough line, then we might wonder exactly um, why there's such a compatibility between the two. And I guess as China, continues to progress, we'll kind of see how much the catch-up growth is going to play a factor in their feasibility and whether or not they'll have to change as they get to kind of the frontier of production, so to speak. So that's basically all I have. I'd like to thank Ryan and Alex for all helping me out on this project. And yeah, send me an email if you want to collaborate or have any comments. So thanks.